Well, man, you got a great story. I appreciate you taking a minute out. And I want to begin our journey here with surviving a global pandemic. The last 3.5 years has been quite a thing. How did you get through it and how did it change you?
So it's funny because I can't tell you the amount of times this year we've said we kind of missed the pandemic a little bit. Not the bad stuff, people dying and all that,
Right,
but just
right.
I'm a father of four and obviously an entrepreneur, so travel a lot, do a lot of different things, and it feels like this has been the first year everything's been back to normal. But it really felt like during the pandemic there was a lot of time to bond as a family. So it's one of those things that I think we're always going to look back on and be kind of grateful for the time. Like, unfortunately, we caught COVID as a household during Christmas, so we couldn't go over anyone's house, but we got to spend it just the six of us. So from a personal level, I mean, there's a lot of things like we just went to Disney a couple weekends ago, but we went to Disney during the pandemic and there was like no one there. It was
Yeah.
great. Like, it was quiet, like you didn't have to wait in line. So like there's certain things like you kind of miss about it, like it was a little bit of a calmer time. It was slower. Like I mentioned early on, I live in Florida, and it kind of reminded me when we have a hurricane. Everybody kind of hung out a little bit more. You bonded a little bit more because there was nowhere to go. There was nothing to do. The hustle and bustle wasn't there. So I'd say from that aspect, as a father and a family man, it was something that changed me. I think it brought us closer together as a family. I really
Yeah.
do.
There was a skit on Saturday Night Live that we saw, my wife and I saw about 6 months ago. And it was people that found out they had COVID and they were jumping in the air, slow
Yeah.
motions. And people freaked out. Like, we all of a sudden got sensitive about everything. It's like, are you kidding me? How many people wanted to stay home from work and now they have a valid reason? Because most of
Yeah.
these people jumping around aren't in a chronic condition. They're just people that are going to have the flu for a week. So
Yeah.
anyway, that was the other thing that was kind of unfortunate. It was like the domino of 9/11 stopped a level of humor. And then once we got to COVID, it's like you gotta laugh at things. I mean, it's just I don't know, man. If you don't laugh, you're gonna cry. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm a big fan of using humor as a weapon and a shield.
yeah,
So I think we have to. We
yeah,
have to. That's how you get through life.
we certainly have to. So let me ask you this. Well, I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders. It's career day. And one of the
Sure.
kids is curious and looks up and says, "What do you do for a living?" How do you answer that child?
I always tell them, I said, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up, and that's okay.
Yes.
And I think as kids, it's important to understand that who you are. What do I do for a living is I do what I love, right? Like every day I get to find new clients, new people to work with. If I'm interested in an industry, I can go find out and become a part of that industry because I'm
Yeah.
kind of like a consultant, right? So I come in and I help businesses grow and scale, but it doesn't matter what your business is. So, in the morning I'm working with an educational company. This afternoon I was just talking to we have an e-commerce clothing company that I work with that sells Italian clothing. And then there's another one that I work with in the afternoon. It's a cigar company that
Yeah.
does, business internationally. So I really don't have to decide what I want to be when I grow up, and neither do you, right? I think there's all this pressure on kids. You'll feel this as a third grader. Find the things that you love and have fun. That's what's most important in life.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this. What did you want to be in the third grade? When you were in that seat and it was career day, what were you dreaming of becoming?
Home. I was not a good student. I was actually a really bad student. I think in third grade, I didn't really know it. I think that was always the hard thing for me as a kid is I could never like put my sights on some things. So I would say there was a couple times, I always looked up to my dad. He was always someone I looked up to. He was kind of like and I write about this in my book. I really didn't know what my dad did. I just know like we were Italian. He went to New York once or twice a month and we drove a Cadillac. So everybody thought we were in the mafia. So like I kind of researched that a little bit as a kid, but he was actually in custom software, believe it or not. It's nothing as glamorous as it sounds. But he was always kind of entrepreneurial. He got involved in network marketing even when I was a kid, so I was exposed to a lot of that. So I always knew I wanted to do something in business. At the time, I thought about maybe opening a restaurant, being a chef. But I really didn't know as a kid, and that was a struggle for me because I feel like everybody was really dialed into that, and I never was.
My dad was a car salesman, so he'd get all of the fancy cars off the lot. We'd always have a dealer car with Cadillac
Yeah,
tags, and he looked like Luca Brasi from The Godfather, so everybody was
yeah,
like,
yeah,
"What's
yeah,
going on?" But and he used to watch the mafia shows and all that, but he always downplayed all of that kind of glorification of the
yeah,
Italian thing. And he used to
yeah.
always tell me this, I will never forget, and I'm going to ask you this question here in a minute.
Sure,
One of the best pieces of advice that he ever gave me, it was more of a saying, was, whatever you do, do not piss in the river because you may have to drink out of it one day.
I
and
like
and
that.
and I always remember it, man, because it's just, be careful. That karmic wheel can come right back around.
Yeah, yeah, no, for
So
sure. For
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, it really is true too. And you really give what you get, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned kind of Massapequa earlier and all that. And think about it, it's not just people, right? It's communities, right? You talk about a place that maybe you've lived or you visited, like what the community gives back to you, you feel that, right? Like
Yeah.
if it's a bad area and people don't care about it and they don't put effort into it, you feel that. I've
Yeah.
had the privilege to travel the world. And you feel that in different places that you go. You can tell when people take pride in the community, the buildings almost ooze that, right?
Yeah.
And you can feel the places where people just don't give a shit, or they
Yep.
don't care. You can feel that too.
Yep. It's funny, I thought about that. Like, what's the allure of towns when I go to them? Like, New York City's just on a whole different level. It's kind of the capital of the world. But I think about Kansas City, and increasingly, we got the NFL draft. We're going to get the World Cup, which I don't know how they pulled that off. I want to figure that out. And,
Yeah,
there's just all of these things, infrastructure. Like, I've been in this town my whole life and I've seen it grow to a level that I never thought that I would see. And there is that pride. People love it. There's a level of grabbing the reins, and you feel that when you go to cities.
yeah,
It's in the air
yeah.
for
And I
sure.
think small towns feel big now because of the internet and things like that. I mean,
Yeah.
we travel more. It's easier to stay connected. It's easier to get a peek in. It's easier to you don't have to get covered on Good Morning America now, to know that there's a great restaurant in Kansas City. You go viral on YouTube or
Yeah.
Instagram or TikTok. I mean, the accessibility to what great things people are doing in all parts of this country are so much more accessible now. Also the bad things, obviously, right? So it's like, it's a double-edged sword, but I think the ability for information to travel fast now in Kansas City, like you said, it's a great place. You probably grew up there, a lot of energy. People are finally seeing it. I'm sure it helps that the Kansas City Chiefs are really good, right? Like
Huge.
Pat Mahomes
Huge.
and the whole Taylor Swift thing. I'm sure that helps a little bit.
It adds for sure. For sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So speaking of big names like that, who's been a hero for you in your life? Who's been an inspiration?
My dad, like I said, my dad is kind of someone that I've always looked up to, and has always been somebody that I've really admired. He's always been a big hero in my life. Um, I also think too, as we go through phases of our life, you can probably say as a kid, whether it was like growing up in South Florida, Dan Marino was really cool, and like, football players, maybe people like that. But I'd really say the heroes in my life have been the mentors that I've had. And it really has been the teachers or the people that took interest in me, or when I was working for some company, somebody that took me under their wings and early on in my entrepreneurial career. Those were a lot of the heroes for me. I say they're the unnamed heroes. They're the guys behind the scenes. I think those have always kind of been my heroes in my life, are the people that have kind of stepped in and done something for me. And I say that now as I've gotten older in my 40s, because I've had the opportunity to be around celebrities and interact with certain people based on some of the projects. And then and I'm not saying they're bad people, they're great people, but I realize they're just people, right? So in looking up to who my heroes are, and even as a kid, I think it's more now the people that have had the influence on me and have taken the time to invest in me. Those are my heroes, and it varies day to day. I mean, some days my daughter's my hero, my son's my hero, and my wife's my wife's my hero every day, because she puts up with me. But it just varies. It's really those unsung people, probably people that most of your audience may have never met or never heard of. Those are the heroes in my life.
So on this very day of December 5th, 2023, if you could meet one person on the planet and spend time with them, who would it be?
I've always said this, George W. Bush. I just, not to be political or anything like that. I just always he went through such a pivotal historical moment. You mentioned 9/11 earlier in my life. I had the opportunity to go up there on a college trip. Just coincidentally, we were up there when he was getting inaugurated. But I think from 9/11 to the persecution he went through to, he was kind of criticized a lot, I feel like, as a president, even still. But now it feels like he's this guy. He's a little bit of a lovable guy. He's been able to be kind of bipartisan. You see him and Michelle Obama together a lot. I
Oh
just would
yeah.
love to like have lunch with him for an hour and be like, man, like, what was it like going through the hard times though? Like having your dad being the president and everything he did and the CIA and that expectation. Like, I'd love to know what he went through and how he deals with it now. But he also seems so at peace now, post craziness, right? As an
Yeah.
entrepreneur, we see this sort of endless tunnel of success and hustle. And like I mentioned, my dad being my hero, and it's funny, like we have lunch together every Tuesday. I'm having lunch with him this afternoon. Like that generation, that baby boomers, they're not retiring, they just keep working. He's seen the fine peace and kind of like he's not really in the spotlight, kind of behind the scenes. Like, how did he find that peace in what he's doing? I'd love to know that, because he went through all these intense different phases. How does he, be in such an intense thing, but then step away and just kind of enjoy where he is and be at peace? And I mean, I think his kids are amazing. It's just an interesting guy to me.
Yeah, I agree. You know, and I was very critical of him, but now when we see the clown show that's going on in this country and you measure it against that, it was tame what we were looking at with him.
Yeah.
And how bad can a guy be that decided to become a visual artist after he got out of office
Yeah,
and
yeah, that's what I
painted
mean.
his
He's just
foot in the
he's
shower?
so
Like,
so happy.
how can you get upset at that guy? So, yeah, I
Yeah,
agree. I
yeah,
think,
yeah. I want to find that level of peace, you know?
yeah, yeah, he found it. He totally found it. Um, so ultimately, at the end of the day, what is the best advice that you've ever gotten in your life?
I mean, I'd say there's two, and they both came from my father. The first, if money can fix it, it's not a problem, you know? And that's not a wealth thing. That's I think we get upset if we get a parking ticket or if you get a dent on your car, if, small things happen, a leak in the house. I've seen people lose their minds over that stuff, And listen, what is it? A couple $100 and it's over, even in the Bronx still, hey, $20, he's out of your life. If money can fix it, it's not a problem. And the other thing is don't sweat the small stuff, and it's all the small stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Um, I just think life's too short. About a month and a half ago, I lost a cousin of mine. And we're Italian, so of course he's not my father's. Everyone that's your age is your cousin. Everyone's older than he's an uncle, but he passed away. But he was a little bit older than me. He was 47, and just really, really instant. Kind of happened in an instant. So at the end of the day, like you said, everything we see going on in this country, all the craziness in our worlds and our lives, and that's why I kind of mentioned earlier. I missed the pandemic because it really lets you focus on the important things. It was just spending time with your family. Because what if it did all end tomorrow? I think we're all in
Yeah.
that state of like, what if it all ended tomorrow? So I'd say the best advice was just don't sweat the small stuff. And I really appreciate the moments in my life I've had the opportunity to do that.
So there was so my day job is I'm an IT technician for a school district. So we had this routine fire drill and we all had to go outside. And we're
Yeah.
out there and someone brought something up and it reminded me of, you remember in 2018 there was missiles that were heading towards Hawaii and we all got alerts on our phone?
Yeah.
Do you ever remember that kind of tangentially? So Jim Carrey was there in Hawaii and got the alert and was ready for the last 60 seconds of his life. And he's been interviewed about that. And it's like you're saying, what if that was it? And he was literally like, all right, I got to reflect. And he was like, wow, this has been a good ride. And he was ready to call it up. And it was just an accidental thing, which is such a bizarre thing. That whole thing was bizarre. Like, how can you
Yeah.
tell this region that's going to get pounded by missiles? It was just an accident. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think anyone will tell you that, right? Anyone that's got diagnosed with cancer or anything,
yeah.
the people that have been pushed against the ropes, right? We're infallible till we're not infallible.
Yeah.
You know, as humans, I think we're the strongest people in the world, but we're also very fragile. And I think once that fragileness kicks in, it's scary, right? But it's also reflective. And like I said, you never see someone who's dying of cancer is like, hey, they only got a year. Be like, well, let me just take one more meeting. Let me do this. Let me hustle here. Let me go there. It's let me focus on the family. Everything else will work itself out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, for sure. I think about that in my life, like what was really worrying me 20 years ago.
yeah.
It's not even anything that comes up on the radar. You just move on and don't sweat the small stuff. So for you being as highly driven as you've been in your life, what is the motivator every day for you to get up, to be you, to be good at business, to consult, to do all these things?
I mean, I think it goes back to a lot of it is, and I mentioned this about, you asked me about the third grade thing. I failed first grade, I got held back in first grade. And I think it's just always not being a good student. And growing up in the 80s and 90s, you were told if you weren't a good student and you didn't go to a good college, you weren't going to be successful. So I kind of wake up every day with, kind of the, hey, I'm going to be not let that mantra define me, and not let that drive me. And then the other thing is I've had the pleasure of working with clients that are really doing amazing things, and that motivates me, that are serving the communities and the people that I believe in. I mentioned I work with an educational company, Top Score Writing. They help first through 12th grade kids become better essay writers, right? And Lisa Combs started this company from her living room in a binder, and her mission is to help as many students as she can. She's also got a nonprofit school. I mean, how could you not get excited about working with someone like that? Hardcore Italians, the Italian clothing line I work with, the guy Mike, he's big on spreading the Italian culture and awareness of it, and helping people, better bring it into their families and things like that. How could you not get excited about that? Even with the cigars, I built an office in my garage during COVID, so now I get smoke in my garage. But I was at a cigar factory, and the guy was telling me, "Do you know there's 450 people it takes from the time that seed goes into the ground to the cigar basically hits my ashtray?"
Oh,
That's 450 families that are being fed. I mean, how could you not get excited about waking up in the morning and impacting companies that are doing these things, that are not just doing things for money for themselves? And you work in education, so you know this, but that are impacting other people. So
yeah.
that's really those two things are what drive me and get me out of bed in the morning.
It's fascinating how ripples happen with humans and how we
Oh yeah.
just all of it reverberates through our ways. So what is it aside from obviously being very proud of your family, um, what's the thing professionally that you've done that you're the proudest of?
I mean, I think just the fact that I've been able to have my own business, and really start something, and I think the fact that I've been able to hire people and put food on their table, that's been very rewarding from the standpoint of at any phase of my business. I've had as little as 2 employees and as many as 12. So I've been kind of small in what I've done, but just the ability to be able to do that, to really have other people trust you, and really let you say, hey, I have a mission and vision, this is what I want to do, and come on board. That's really been the overall biggest accomplishment, is really having employees. I think it's kind of the coolest thing to think like, man, like people are trusting me and I'm able to do things that are able to allow their family to do something. And they put that trust and they put that effort into the work and the mission of what we're doing. So like I said, whether it's with my company and the people that work for me directly, and the things we do, or with my clients that I work with, it just always kind of gets me excited to be able to, like you said, put that ripple effect into people. And I would say, I know it's a very general answer. I couldn't pinpoint it to one thing or one deal. I think as I've gotten older, I realized like they're all important, right? The small things, the big things. I did a project in Israel with an oil and gas company. Sure, that was a huge deal. That was amazing. I got to live in Israel for 2 years and go back and forth between here and the U.S. I mean, there have been cool projects. Got to work with Wayne Huizenga, with the former owner of the Dolphins, flew on his private 747 jet. Like, there's been cool moments, but I think the overall thing has been the day-to-day impact and how I felt in the day-to-day of doing certain things.
Yeah. Well, you had mentioned football up front. Are you a big sports fan?
I am a season ticket Dolphin holder, so yeah,
Okay.
and my sons as well. Their decision, by the way, too. So my son was a Kansas City fan for a little while, though. He was
Right.
he was Mahomes guy, and then he got very Dolphinized at one point. So
Yeah, I mean, you guys got Hill and things, and we're feeling that sting now because we don't have wide receivers. That's going to be our cardinal sin. We
yeah,
just
yeah.
so my question to you is this: as a sports fan, if you could go back in time and see one sporting event with your own eyes, one game, one moment, where are you going?
I mean, you're probably gonna want to see Babe Ruth play in a World Series. I mean, that would be
It's
the
good.
ultimate, an old Yankee Stadium. Like I said, you could smoke in the stands, you could have a cigar, you could. I mean, there's just like I said, I was born in the wrong century, I think, but I'd love to go to like old Yankee Stadium and just see Babe Ruth play in a World Series game. Would be
Yeah.
the house that Ruth built. That would be. There's nothing more monumental in sports than that. You
Oh
know.
yeah. I've never heard that answer, but that's right up there. And I was watching I went to it was around Father's Day this year. I went and saw Otani come to Kansas City and
Yeah.
he hit a home run. He got thrown out at second. It was a very weird game. One of our rookies hit a grand slam in like the bottom of the 11th. It was a highly emotional game. But I'm just watching this guy that's like Babe Ruth. And I'm like, we've never seen a specimen like this. And even as far back as I was, I could still tell how big he was. I could still tell how good he was. It's
Yeah.
wild, man, that we're
Yeah.
watching that unfold again.
Yeah, yeah, it's neat, and I think and I know too, a lot of people will knock sports, and even in entrepreneurship, I know a lot of people say like, "Oh, well, sports is a waste of time," and all this. I mean, I can tell you just the bonding though I've done with my kids, and
Oh,
we've
yeah.
gone up, we've seen Yankee games, and we were actually going to go to Kansas City. We were so mad the game was in Germany because our plan was to come see the Dolphins
Oh,
play in Kansas City. That was my
yeah.
son actually in May. That was what he wanted for his birthday. So I said, okay. And then I'm like, I don't know about Germany, buddy.
Yeah.
And so logistically, it just didn't work out. But it's been a neat bonding experience with my kids. But I think and networking in business, and I just think sports brings people together. In so many fun ways. It's been great. We even went last New Year's. We went up to New England and we watched the Dolphins and the Patriots play. In New
Cool.
England, and I told my kids, I said, "Man, get ready. These people are going to be really mean to you.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough." Nicest group of people I've ever. I mean, listen,
Wow.
we got some razzing, don't get me wrong, but like
Yeah.
everybody was like, but they appreciated the rivalry, right? They appreciated it. It was good banter, but they weren't mean.
Yeah.
And I've been to some sports places where people are mean. It was kind of a neat experience.
That's cool. Yeah, it's interesting. My son's on the spectrum. He's actually turning 19 this week, and he's always been into sports, and I have too. And I never really pushed it, but it's just by osmosis. He doesn't really watch that much TV, but he loves sports and he connects to it. And it really is a glue. And these guys are they're putting their whole existence into it, the effort and time and what they're doing, and they have to be a team and they have to be precise. They make it look easy, but what they're doing is along the lines of a level of entertainment that we divulge, whether it's a movie or it's anything, music. It takes a
Yeah.
lot of effort and precision and sacrifice, and I think there's a lot to be said about that.
Yeah, yeah, and how cool nowadays too that we could be so close to them. I think social media allows you to see a lot of the
Yeah.
behind the scenes and different stuff like that. I just think it's like I said, growing up, Dan Marino was so like a far away figure. Like maybe you saw him out somewhere and you're like, oh, there he is. But like now, you Tyreek Hill, you're a fan of. Like my son's a fan of all the players. He follows him on social media. Like
Yeah.
he's even commented on their stuff and they've liked it. I mean, it's just like instant connection. Like it's such a cool time to be a kid and be a sports fan. You know?
It's an exciting time to be alive in these modern times. I went to a grocery store in Kansas City about 5 or 6 years ago, and there was a text that you could send to go to a camp, and it was at the Alex Smith camp. So Miles got to go and met him. Alex Smith is a wonderful human being,
Oh
dude. It
yeah,
just
yeah.
was so cool. He was like 12 or 13 at the time. So the next year, this was before Tyreek Hill got big, he had a camp and they had to fill seats. So they offered it free to us because we went to the Alex Smith. So we got to get free and free. So we went, and man, Tyreek was so cool with Miles. Miles doesn't have a filter. So he went right up and was like, hey, can I play, throw the ball to you? He's throwing the ball to Tyreek. Tyreek's running and doing all this, but
Oh,
he was
that's
so
awesome.
good. And I talked to some of the guys there because this was when that whole controversy was happening in his life. And they were like,
Yeah,
we've done a lot of these camps, and he's really good. Like he's a level that's like we haven't seen
yeah,
before. So um
that's awesome.
that's another level of why it's so cool. So at the end of the day, Mike, everyone has this perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
It's a good question. It's funny, and you mentioned kind of third grade again, and I'll go back to that. I love referencing, younger me. I don't know yet, and I think that's okay. I mean, I think I'm obviously, I think, if, and I always say that I think ultimately father, will be, kind of my biggest thing. But I'm an outsourced COO. That's my job title. But I think it's also evolving. I mean, I think it's a great thing now. It's like I'm always discovering who I am, and that, and even the George Bush thing. I said that's why it's like how do you he was president, but now he's like you said, now he's a painter,
Yeah.
like how do you, I think we're always evolving and changing who we are. You don't have to
Mhm.
be this one thing. And I think
Yeah.
I'm a piece of clay right now. I'm constantly changing and molding. I'm kind of like Play-Doh though, a little bit more doughy. But I think it's just I'm someone that's constantly evolving and growing, and I'm 43 years old, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And it's I think it's been a neat experience in life. Sure, there's responsibilities, there's certain things I have to do. I can't just be, you know, flippant about things. Now I have
Yeah.
4 kids to take care of, mouths to feed. I always say when I was in my, early 30s and I started working with entrepreneurs, equity sounded like an exciting thing. Now I'm like, well, I can't feed my kids equity flakes, right? So it's a little bit
Yeah.
different process. But I think I'm an evolving person. I'm growing, I'm changing. I'm an outsourced COO. I'm a father. I'm a guy that loves steak, Italian food, and cigars. That's
Yeah.
that's kind of who I am in a nutshell.
I dig it. So if anyone wants to reach out, learn more about you, hire you, anything about your world, what can they do?
Yeah, real easy on Mike Vaquero on all social media platforms, and MikeVaquero.com is my website. It's got links to everything. Love to jump on a call and learn more about you as well. I always love connecting with new people and finding out who they are and what they do.
Right on.